Today's a good day because it's Saab time again. And this time we're in one of the rarest Saabs of all. It's the 93X, and it's one of the Swedish brand's last hurrahs, and they only built it for 3 years, so it is very, very rare. It's a jacked up version of the 93 Sportwagon, which was the estate car, and it has a four-wheel drive system and a raised ride height of 35mm, along with a 2-litre turbo engine producing 210 horsepower. It was one of the most aspirational models that they did at the time. So, as always, I'm going to be trying not to be too biased because I absolutely do love Saabs and they are brilliant cars, and it is such a shame that they disappeared from the world. So think along the lines of the Volvo XC70 and the Subaru Legacy Outback. They were the cars that really brought that style to the forefront, and Saab, they wanted in on this action. And they also thought, well, we haven't really got the money to produce a big crossover car. So they also added the obligatory plastic cladding, which is on the bumper at the front and the back and down the sills. The plastic underbody skid guards, they are plastic and they will not do anything to protect the soft underbelly of this car, so it really isn't a car that you would want to actually take off-roading. Think of it more of a, like a modern SUV, which has that helpful raised up ride height, but it's not a car that you would actually take off-road. So refreshingly, there were only two versions of this car you could buy. It was the petrol engine, which was a 2-litre, 210 horsepower turbo petrol engine, and the diesel, which was 180 horsepower twin turbo diesel. They both had a lot of power, so there are no slow 93Xs. It's the petrol version that was the halo car. It was the daddy. It was the one that you wanted because, for a start, it was the only one with the four-wheel drive system, and it had a higher raised ride height of 35mm versus 20 for the diesel. So the diesel really was just if you wanted the looks of the car, but without the benefit of the extra traction and so on. I think it looks absolutely fantastic. I think everything they did with this car, with the twin tailpipes at the back and the roof rack and the sort of mean look that this car has, I just think everything works in it, and it just looks great. And of course, because it's a Saab, it just doesn't look like anything else on the roads now. It's a really unusual piece of design, and of course this car is just incredibly rare. To put it into perspective, there are more Volvo 740s left than there are of this car. I think there's about 150 petrols and around 250 diesel. That's actually less than there are Reliant Robins on the roads of the UK, so for me that's always a reason to buy a car. I like to have something different, and of course it's just really quirky. Everywhere you look you've got little Saab quirks and features, like the night panel, which turns off all the dashboard lights at night and it allows you to focus. You just have the speedo in green and everything else is gone, and you can just cruise along in the dark and focus on the drive. You've got the handbrake, which is very neatly integrated into the center console, and it kind of like hides out the way when it's gone. You have the ignition mounted in the center console in the middle, which is a Saab only thing. You just don't see that anywhere else. And of course you get that cup holder which pops out of the dashboard and is like a work of art, an engineering marvel. It had the very futuristic for the time touchscreen system with a very nice sound system, and it works okay actually, because Saab put a lot of money into that thing and they didn't use GM's version or whatever they had in the parts bin. Of course Saab had to make it themselves, and the sat-nav long doesn't work on this car. I think it needs updating, or you need a DVD or something. It wouldn't be probably very good now anyway, would it, that sat-nav system, so I don't think we're missing anything. Now of course with it being a 9.3, it does also have the somewhat suspect interior plastics. Now the indicator, for example, it sounds a little bit like my knees when I get up off the ground, very crunchy. The same goes for the door handle, which is exactly the same on this car. So in the petrol version only, you got the four-wheel drive Haldex system. Haldex is actually a Swedish company, and the original Haldex coupling was designed by a guy who worked for Saab. Now, he actually ended up quitting Saab in order to develop it on his own because Saab were not supporting him in the development of it. And it's a shame because it would have meant that Saab could have got there first with the Haldex system, but they didn't, and it went to Volkswagen and Audi, who put it in cars like the Mark 1 Audi TT and the Audi S3. And then 10 years later, by which time the Haldex system was on its 4th generation, it got put into this car. Saab were obviously a bit late to the party, but they did tune that system and made it their own, and they altered the software and so on. And what it basically means is that this four-wheel drive system is very, very clever, and because it's also got a limited slip differential at the back, you can essentially send nearly all of the power to one wheel if needed. So if that wheel is the only wheel with grip, then that's the wheel that'll get the power. Normally, as you're driving along, cruising along like this, all the power's coming through the front wheels, and it's only when it detects that it needs to send power elsewhere that it will. So you've got a generally front wheel drive setup. Now, something else that this car has up its sleeve is self-leveling rear suspension, and when you chuck it round a bend, it's amazing how little body roll there is, because obviously this car, it's high up, it's on like big springs, it should be very rolly, but it's not. It corners quite flat, and it's generally quite a nice car to drive. Obviously it's a big, heavy estate car. This car weighs close to 1,700 kilos. It does handle its weight well. It's not got the best steering in the world, but it does grip really well, and it does turn in really well. It's quite a fun car to drive, surprisingly. So that 210 horsepower petrol turbo engine is the same engine that you would have got in the aero version of the standard Sport Saloon. Oh yes, there it is. Yeah, it's certainly not a slow car by any stretch of the imagination. 0 to 60 is dispatched in about 8 seconds. It's got that lovely smooth power band that all the Saab turbo engines have. Obviously Saab were the guys that really put turbos on the map with their earlier cars, so they knew what they were doing. And you can see that it has the heritage of turbo engines because you've got a little turbo boost gauge in the dials. Not many modern cars will tell you the boost that the turbo is doing, but back when turbos were cool, that's what you needed to know. You needed to know how hard the turbo was being pushed. And then in the diesel version of this car, you would have had 2 turbos. You'd have a small one for the low down power and then a bigger one for the higher rev range. But petrol, of course, it's just smooth, it's quiet, a nice comfortable cruiser most of the time. Very little engine noise or wind or road noise. It's a very, very nice place to sit and munch up the miles, because obviously you've got that extra travel in the suspension, and unlike some cars which they overcompensate for the fact that the car is raised up and they make the suspension really firm so that they're like, look how great this car is around corners because we've got really firm suspension. This car is actually quite softly sprung and it's a very comfortable ride. And then coupled with the comfortable seats and the six-speed manual gearbox, you know, when you're cruising along on the motorway, the RPM's nice and low and the car is quite at home. So we haven't yet reviewed the Sportwagon of any kind, so it'll be interesting to see what it's like in the back, and for that we're going to ask backseat JJ. What do you think, mate? Yeah, sure, mate. It's pretty spacious back here. It's not the very best in its class, but I've got enough leg room, and I've got obviously lots of headroom because it's a big square kind of shape. It's very comfortable, of course. You've got comfy seats, you've got a nice big flat armrest, and it isn't spoiled by cup holders because the cup holders are down here and they pop out in a very pleasing, smooth way. This car's got quite a few nice things that were specable back in the day. I've got the brochure here, and it's got these like carbon fibre trim panels which are all around the car, and it goes well with this very dark interior with this sort of like partial leather and fabric seats. It's funny because this brochure says, what's your favourite colour? It then goes on to say, well, it doesn't really matter what your favourite colour is because we only do grey or red. The person who picked this car picked the right colour because it's red. It's got the very delicious 10-spoke 18-inch alloy wheels as well. This is some good lifestyle stuff. Go further. Enjoy a higher position. Designed to elevate your experience. Stay on track. You've also got a very big spacious boot because this is the estate car. Now again, it's not quite as spacious as some of the other rivals in its class, but because it's a big boxy estate car, there is plenty of room, and you can fold these seats down. You've got a nice big like parcel shelf that covers the whole bay so you can't see what's in there and people steal it. You've got a 12-volt socket, and you've got like hooks to tie things down. This really is one of the OG practical lifestyle vehicles, isn't it? So yeah, back to you, mate. Oh, cheers, pal. That was very informative. Thank you. I think the true advantage of a car like this is that feeling that you know you can kind of drive wherever you want when you're coming towards someone and you have to go off the road onto the verge, or you need to like go onto a bumpy track or turn around, or you never feel like the car is going to struggle or suffer. It's just going to be like, yeah, it's fine. Do what you want, just turn around wherever you want and drive on whatever road you want. It's not like you're going to go off-roading through some massive bog or over a huge mountain. It's more just like a peace of mind that no matter where you are on a normal road, you're never going to get stuck in the mud or like have any issues. So maintenance and reliability. Now obviously all Saabs are now pretty old and they do need maintaining and looking after. So you do need to look for a car that's been looked after and serviced. In particular with this car, obviously you've got that complicated Haldex four-wheel drive system, and that needs oil changes.
The diesel model claws back some points here, as there is no maintenance required for the four-wheel drive system because it doesn't have one. You will of course also get better MPG, and the twin-turbo engine was a very advanced thing for its day, smooth and powerful.
Michael, the owner of this car, thank you Michael for lending it me. He takes this car to Simply Saab, which are a specialist in the Bristol area, and apparently they come highly recommended. But there are Saab specialists around the country, and you know, if you need anything doing on these cars, then you will be able to find someone who will work on it. What I love about Saabs is that they are quirky and different, and this is like a quirky and different version of a quirky and different car. A modern Saab from the GM era, okay, they have their critics, but they have all of the modern features that you want in a car, and they're safe. You know, they've got the 5-star safety rating, they do things differently, they have all the interesting features, they look different, they stand out. So for that reason I really do like this car, and you know, you're not really compromising on anything because it still drives nicely, it's very spacious and practical, and you've got that sort of safe feeling of the four-wheel drive system if you opt for the petrol. Now obviously there's the diesel version, and if you like the looks of this car, which I do, then the diesel version is still one worth having because it looks different and it looks cool, but it's not going to have that same, you know, four-wheel drive system or the same ground clearance. It's just not quite as full on as this car. But yeah, thank you very much to Michael for lending this car. I've got a load of videos on Saab 9.3s now, so I've just created a playlist up there called I Bloody Love a Saab. So if you want to watch some other videos on 9.3s, then please do click up there. And thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.